Question here, I would say, for me, I associate myself with the remarks from the gentleman from Kentucky. And I would just appreciate you guys coming in here, especially as we don't have votes tonight, to present the legislation. But just a couple questions. First, Mr. Walberg, do these sound correct to you roughly that currently we're seeing new car costs of $50,000, which are nearly double where they were about 10 years ago. Car loan payment defaults are at a 30-year high. The average EV costs about $16,000 more than its internal combustion engine counterpart. Just yesterday, the Wall Street Journal published an article titled "Why Repairing Your EV is So Expensive," a story about a dent on his Rivian electric pickup truck cost $22,000. It took 2.5 months to fix. And sorry if that's repeating anything that was offered earlier. The dealers right now have them piling up on lots because the American people aren't getting them. I understand that even if you are a supporter of all this, you say, well, that's why we need the infrastructure. We just put out $8 billion to go fund the infrastructure, and it hasn't been deployed. Then to the extent that you can do it, to the extent my friend from Kentucky is correct, you're basically, the cost of doing that is the air conditioner for your home. Then you've got, a story I was reading, some people in Alaska talking about the extent to which they've got a battery-powered vehicle. It takes the entire charge of a Tesla to de-thaw the vehicle in the Arctic cold in Alaska. Then you've got the same situation in North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, et cetera, where you got people that are saying, look, I don't want to die in the freezing cold. And look, all of this is fine if it's choice, right? This is the point. My friend from Kentucky, perfectly fine having a Tesla vehicle, driving to Kentucky, can choose to stop and charge it wherever the gentleman chooses to charge, and hopefully not have the Secretary of Energy come in and push him aside and push aside a mom with a baby and say, sorry, I got a photo op I need to do. But the issue here is not just saying all of the above approach, as my former boss, Governor Perry, talked about in Texas. The all of the above approach is if the market is driving it. And you say, let's put this out there. But now we're saying to people that by 2032, 2/3 of automobiles must be electric vehicles. That is an astounding disregard for the well-being of the American people. An absolutely unbelievable display of hubris by government leadership, forcing people into poverty, forcing people to be unable to actually go about their lives, get jobs, be able to take care of their families with vehicles that are more expensive to maintain, may not serve their function if they're in the freezing cold in North Dakota, may not serve their function in other capacities, putting aside all the side costs, putting aside the battery materials, putting aside the child labor around the world that produces the materials for not just solar panels, batteries, and so forth. I just wonder if the gentleman could expand on the extent to which this will be destructive of the American industry, but also in favor of China and some of our competitors and adversaries around the globe. But importantly, what this means to the average American family. I know you spoke about it before, but this is just, it merits fixating on this. This is not just something you just pass and go, oh, isn't this nice? You've got a rule that the administration is trying to dictate through fiat from the executive branch without input from Congress to just dictate all these automobiles. And guess what? The supply chains mean that starts now. If this rule goes into place, it's purposeful, and it happens now. We bankrupt families, and we give them the inability to have the automobiles they need to care for themselves and their families. I wonder if the gentleman could expand on that.
Yeah, I'm just looking for a few things that you didn't cover.
Yeah.
That was an expansive list you put together there. And I think, you hit on the key costs that will be brought in, not only for the original purchase price, when you figure how long it takes to get to a place where an EV will surpass what an internal combustion engine is for cost. It's about 10 years and a minimum of 28 to 50,000 miles. But I think when you're talking of the environment concerns as well, about health concerns, right now, Michigan, not even putting into place of what California has to care for and taking out what's coming across from China in the air. Michigan, 8% of what we have to clean up in our air comes from China, who is ultimately going to benefit the most from having EVs. And what they're doing is producing more and more greenhouse gas, more coal-fired plants to build up their energy capabilities for their manufacturing. So when you add all that cost to it, plus 500,000 tons of ore, the various types of ore that goes into a battery, it takes 500,000 tons. Think how much greenhouse gas, carbon exhaust that comes out of all of that to build one battery.
So I agree with that, and Mr. Peters, I'll try to ask this, not like in a gotcha way, I'm just trying to figure out, from California, and, Governor Newsom, I think last year in that heat wave, was quoted as saying, we're not saying don't charge your EVs, we're just saying please don't charge them between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. And I guess my question is when that's what we're doing to the average family and worker, like, what do they do? What do they say? I mean, that's my predominant concern here is like we would have to produce 50% more electricity, I'm told, different studies, different reports, I get that, than we do right now if we converted all our cars to EVs, right? And so it's some massive amount, which we're doing heavily by wind and solar, which has obviously significant reliability concerns and impacts. We're not producing nuclear, which would be the most reliable power that doesn't generate CO2. And so I'm just trying to figure out how on earth we can have a mandate that within 8 years, and the supply chains start now, that we convert the whole world to 2/3 EVs and not see that that's going to destroy productivity in the American family and the hard worker. So I'm just curious the perspective on that we should be checking the administration on this one.
Well, thanks, Mr. Roy. It is the rule is not a mandate. The rule is an emission standard, and it allows people to, if you can comply with the emission standard, you can sell any car that complies with the emission standards. It doesn't require you to buy an EV. I'd just say too, one of the discussions here I hope we will follow up on is that we expect that there are a lot of reasons why load growth is going to grow a lot in the United States for electricity. We need to improve the grid. We need to make it more reliable, more secure, and I'd like to work with you on that. I'm also trying to promote permit reform to make all these investments go faster. So I think there's lots of reasons to be concerned about the grid, but load growth is going to be something that we all be concerned with, and it's a larger issue than just EVs.
Well, Mr. Wahlberg, I wonder if you have any thoughts on that about what we just articulated. And I mean, the EVs have an average range of 234 miles in a single charge, while the average gasoline-powered vehicle can travel 403 miles with a full tank. And you can, by the way, go get gas and keep going. And so that's a real concern. Meanwhile, we're going to say to people, as Gavin Newsom did in California, sorry, you can't charge your cars during this window, or we're asking you not to. Meanwhile, an electric car will generate just 23% fewer greenhouse gas emissions than a gasoline-powered car when you take it in totality, how we're getting our power. And if every car on Earth were electric, that translates to a mere 1.8% decline in total emissions. Maybe that's accurate, not accurate. We can go or have a debate about statistics. But the fact is, we know from everything I've read, it's a minuscule impact on the relative production of emissions compared to the, for example, 1,100 coal-fired plants in China that they're building 2 a week on top of it. Does the gentleman have any additional thoughts?
No, you're absolutely right. When my colleague says this isn't a mandate,
Right.
I'm not sure how you can say it's not a mandate when the only way you can meet this aggressive mandate or aggressive standard, EPA, is by not having anything except electric. But then assuming that you don't add all the other costs, the emission costs of producing the batteries, of mining the minerals, of transporting it. And then what do you do after it doesn't work anymore? And you got to have another battery put in and the costs that go there as well. So this is far different than the EPA in the CAFE standards that John Dingell and Sergio Marchionne and I were talking about, where it ultimately mandated better catalytic converters. But it didn't mandate the shape of the catalytic converter, the type of the catalytic converter, and it certainly didn't mandate the car. And that's what's taking place here. And I would also add, as a test case, California, we look at California as pushing and mandating very similar approach to going to electric vehicles. But right now, EVs As of 2022, only 2.61% of all cars in California. Gasoline hybrid, not going to yours, are 4.76% of all cars. And they're being bought by people who say, this will work for us, and it meets both of our needs. But gasoline-only cars are still 89% of what Californians purchase as well. So going back to what people want, what people need, what we can produce to meet these concerns, I think a mandate is the wrong direction.
And am I correct that a group of nearly 4,000 automobile dealers sent a letter to President Biden saying, hey, hold on, these things are piling up in our
Yeah,
lots?
38,000.
Right.
That's not quibble.
And so then we had, and not that I'm going to be a proponent of wanting to talk about taxes, but to the extent that this has a significant impact on the Highway Trust Fund, right, I would assume that's at least something we got to consider, that when you've got vehicles that weigh about 33% more than their gas-powered counterparts, wear and tear on the roads, but then you've got, they're not paying a single dollar in the gas and diesel taxes that fund the highways, that's going to take a whole other transition in a way of thinking about how we handle the funding of the highways. Again, not advocating for more taxes, but here we're subsidizing these vehicles that then won't provide revenue. And we're subsidizing the vehicles, for example, to the extent that they're going to people who make over $100,000 a year. That's who's getting the subsidies. Any other thoughts on that?
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.